So we have DEFA Minister Clare Barber. Can you tell us about what's been going on with avian flu?
So we had an outbreak initially in kept geese, and there was a necessity to cull those that were within that flock. We've then also had an outbreak within feral hens at Salty Will. We've obviously made people aware, because the most important thing in this is making other keepers aware so they can take the appropriate biosecurity measures. What that really entails is making sure people house their birds in as best a way as they can. Some of that we recognise might not be in conventional houses, but putting proper fencing around and then putting some form of covering over. With the aim really is to prevent wild birds that could potentially bring the disease into the island from mixing with the birds that we have here on the island, and therefore risking spreading it. So we do recognise that wild birds is the most likely import in terms of avian influenza, but also recognising that there is a limitation on people being able to bring new birds in at the minute. So anything where people choose to bring birds in or would need to bring birds in would need to be under discussion with DEFA, and an assessment would be made as to whether that would be appropriate or possible.
So it's been a few days since we've had any other confirmed cases. It's looking like the measures that have been taken at the minute are working, but still the biggest issue is migratory birds, because naturally that's what birds do, and given the UK cases at the minute.
So we're really delighted actually that the people we're talking to, they want to make the changes that we've asked for, because ultimately they want to protect their birds. And actually, the feedback's been really positive from people across the island. So I think that's been great. We've had a really proactive comms coming out of our vet and animal health team, which again supports that. So at the moment, those are the only 2 cases that we have. We don't know. I'd love to be able to read the future. It is possible we will have additional outbreaks, and I'm certainly not going to sit here and pretend that's not going to happen. There is a risk of that, and so we would ask people to keep up with that good biosecurity, not spreading any contamination on boots or footwear from farm to farm, or from premises to premises where birds are housed. So good biosecurity measures, housing of birds, and not bringing birds into the island. And we've also asked people, initially we talked about not feeding any wild or garden birds. That was just because we wanted to be very clear on the rules, and we've then rolled that back and said actually we want people to look after garden birds. We don't want to leave birds starving, but we would ask people to give some consideration. We don't want people feeding some of the wild ducks, for example, because that is a risk of bringing and attracting in migratory birds that could then contaminate the flock. So it's a balance. We're happy for people to feed garden birds, but to give some consideration if you do have other kept birds within your property.
I just find I'm old enough to remember when we first heard of H5N1. It seems like over 10 years ago, and it was one of these killer flus which was going to get us. The risk to humans is very low from this, though, isn't it?
Yeah, the risk to humans is incredibly low, and especially with the sort of birds and the housing we have for them on the island. So we're not overly concerned, but we would say to people to take appropriate measures when handling birds. Make sure we're cleaning down feeders. Make sure people are wearing and cleaning their boots down if they are going in with large populations of birds. So we're asking people to take common sense approach, but the risk to humans is low. This is very much our concern is around risk to our bird populations on the island.